Welcome to Psychic Holistic Spotlight of Rhode Island. I am Kathy Costa, your host for today. We also have Josie Way and Bill Hannon as our co-hosts. We're interviewing a guest today that it's been a while since she's been on the show. I think it's been a few years if I'm not mistaken, but she's back. Her name is Laura Joseph. She does quite a few different modalities of things. She's been reading for a while, giving messages though for people. She offers Reiki and she teaches it as well. But we're going to start off today with some books that she's written. One book she's written on her own, and another one that she's contributed to, mostly on healing, trauma healing, if I'm not mistaken. Trauma healing, or is it different kinds?
Different kinds.
Okay, yeah. Different kinds of healing. I know you do. I know you deal with a lot of trauma healing as well too. So let's talk about the first one that you've contributed a chapter to, the Secrets to Healing.
Well, this is the chapter.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Feisty.
Yes.
Feisty. Dangerously amazing women using their voices to make an impact. So when I was asked to contribute to this book, I had a very hard truth that needed to be talked about that I would say 4 or 5 years ago, everybody thought I was crazy. But it talks about what it takes to leave a domestic violence relationship, and while also advocating for others and being incarcerated for never being charged for anything criminal, while also having your right to a lawyer denied, and still coming out the other end to still use your voice, to still work on how do you make an impact in the world.
Okay, well that is a heavy subject, yeah. That is a very heavy subject. So when was that one published?
So this came out in January of 2020 it's published by an amazing publisher, Red Thread Publishing. It's an all-female led international publishing company.
Okay. Now how did you get asked to contribute to that?
Because I was actually working with them on this, and then I heard about that, and there was some things in talking about Secrets to Healing. The hard part was really about how do I blend my story with the teachings and the messages that, the impact I want to leave with, the whole client study and all these other things, right? And when they heard about that part of the chapter, they said that would be perfect for that book.
Okay.
And that's kind of how that happened.
Okay. So what started for this book to be written though on that subject?
So this is probably, I've been writing, trying to figure out how to publish a book for almost 10 years.
Oh.
And I think, this is probably like the 4th draft. The first one, started writing blogs. And then I was going to write a book on kind of the spiritual path to healing, especially from domestic violence or trauma. And then it was, I also did research and data on Massachusetts, and then it was going to be a book on the family court system.
Oh.
With domestic violence and their stats and kind of doing all these things, and use it pretty much as a gateway for legislative and policy reform.
Okay.
And then I think I saw somebody on Facebook who was, I feel, that may have been addicted to their own drama. Not to say that they didn't have stuff, but they felt like they needed validation always. So I actually offered to work with them for free. They turned me down.
Yeah.
And so I said, in this whole scenario, I said, I'm going to just write a blog post on it. I was going to comment on them. Like, no, that's too long for a comment. I'm going to turn it into a blog post. Oh, that's too long for a blog post. And then before you know it, a book was born.
Okay.
Kind of combining bits of other things. And also, I have 9 case studies in here because one of the things I've learned over almost 20 years of practice is that almost every known illness and disease, especially chronic illness, cancer, addiction, has a link to unresolved, unhealed, unaddressed trauma.
Okay.
So, and then we have a healthcare system, which in the book, my data is already out of date, I realize, which says I think $3.8 trillion is what we spend in health expenditures every year. But this in 2022, it was 4.8, I think either 4.8 trillion or 4.3 trillion, which is a significant increase. And so it just shows that our system is not geared towards actually healing people, because you don't make money in cures. You don't make money on actually healing people.
True.
You make money on having them as a repeat customer, right?
Right.
And so now we have a whole model and system that's we are sicker now, and I think we even sank, and I think I posted in this book too, is I think we're sank to like number 15 in the world as far as quality healthcare in the world. But we have the most expensive. So this book was born out of how do I heal myself? It was kind of like in a search originally 20 years ago, how do I heal the broken me? And it started with when I couldn't trust people, I would trust spirit, you know? And then I would get trained in all these other different modalities. And then I finally met my teachers out of Japan in 2015. And that was a game changer for me, because before I felt like I was either missing something, or, you know, like I just felt like I was missing something, or why, if this is known to cure or help or heal folks, then why aren't we seeing it? And then when you really study with people that are rooted in their lineage and teachings that go back for generations. My teacher grew up, he's just turned 70 as a matter of fact. And so he learned these therapies his whole life. I mean, that's all he knew. So you can't get more experience than that, 70 years. So I started, you know, and my office was in a medical office. So I started getting, you know, working with people with, you know, I don't know, I had 2 knee replacements in the same knee that's not healing, and I don't know why. You know, and then we would connect it to, you know, they had a miscarriage with their first grandchild, to somehow triggering a somatic memory of when they had a stillborn, their first child as a stillborn. So, you know, it's fascinating, like when you understand all these things and why the body doesn't heal, why we don't recover, or we get better and then we're sick again, right? Like 4 weeks later, right?
Okay, so just one quick question now. So for the cause of the lack of healing, is that just this life trauma stuff though, or do you see past life incorporated into this life as well too?
Well, there's a lot of things changing in the universe, and I don't do past life regressions, but past lives do come up either in the readings, or when I'm doing a healing session or an integrative session, or like when we do women's circles and ceremonial circles, sometimes it'll come up, and usually if it comes up where I see it, it's because it's close to the surface. Okay. So, and because of where we are energetically and astrologically right now, I'm seeing a lot of past life connection with why am I feeling like suicidal all of a sudden, but yet I'm a happy person, right? And yet, you know, like, and I had a situation where it was tied to them being a slave in a previous life, and their children were murdered, so they killed themselves.
Well, again, Aquarius has a lot to do with the truth coming forward.
Yeah.
The truth is coming out, and
some people are struggling with that though.
well,
There's a lot that have gotten it, and I think our last 4 years we've learned a lot. You know, I can actually say that I was incarcerated without people looking at you like, well, you had to have done something wrong. You know?
No, it's a money.
No, I've never committed a crime.
It's a money-making system.
And Massachusetts right now so this is where I blend, we call it sacred activism, right? If you really want to heal trauma, you know, just like what my teacher said, if you really want to learn Reiki, you've got to learn all of it. It isn't just putting your hands on people, right? It isn't just saying 5 sentences in Japanese, Kyo daki wa karu na shinpai su na kancha shite gyo hageme to ni shinsetsu ni. It's more than that. It's how do we interact with each other.
That just opens the doorway. That's
You
all
got
that
it.
does.
And so, and a lot of indigenous cultures, and Europeans probably are the most where we've lost a lot of our traditions, and I talk about, I think I mentioned it in this book as part of like a root cause, because this is about the secrets to healing is how do we address the root issues to chronic illness and to trauma. And I did an interview with a colleague of mine because she was going through breast cancer, and she wrote this amazing piece, and I was like, oh my gosh, yes. And it was her journey through healing through breast cancer and linking it to the generational stuff, but also linking it all the way back to how we titled it, how the burning times of witches influence white women culture today. Why don't white women support each other? Why don't white women have a community? Why do white women feel threatened when another woman talks to their husbands or their boyfriends? Why do white women experience these things? And we do it so subconsciously, we don't even realize we're doing it. And then we either self-shame ourselves,
Right.
or we try to justify it.
And it's
right?
being exploited on TV with all these shows about
But it
wives
goes to
of
root
this
issues.
location, wives of that location, the
Right.
Kardashians, all this stuff. They're just picking on each other about petty stuff instead of backing each other up.
Well, now we're going into other layers like patriarchy. When we look at just the burning times of witches, it is 500 years or more of altering our DNA, those who are of European descent. Just think about that, of being conditioned in our own DNA. So we are being born to automatically want to fight with women, or oust other women. Like, it's just kind of coded there. And sometimes when I had that awareness, I was like, oh my gosh, she's onto something. I keep telling her she has to write a book on it, But I did interview her for those who are interested on the podcast that I have, which is Triggers in Spiritual Medicine. But it goes into, so a lot of what we're seeing, like past life, it's multi-layered. Like we've cleared out a lot of layers, and now we're ready and we're primed to go deeper, right? And unfortunately, this is also where we're seeing high suicide rates right now. We're also seeing, this is where we're seeing the clash, right, of why domestic violence is up 40% in the past few years, but yet, and we see like states, wanting to, like I think South Carolina wants to make abortion, for instance, a woman who does abortion as a death penalty, right? And I see this so clearly, it's like we're back to the persecution of witches. But yet at the same time, we just elected in Massachusetts, being a Puritan state. So this is where the extremes are clashing, right? Like together at the same time. But we elected our first female governor, but also our first LGBTQ governor. And I think out of 3 or 4 of the top offices in Massachusetts are all held by women for the first time in history. So we have this clashing. But in order to fix the external world, we have to go in here because it's our own lineages, it's our own genealogy and generational stuff. And when we can come out clear here, then we're better able to serve the world.
I mean, even the DNA has been shown to have links with previous lifetimes, and it goes back generations.
Absolutely.
DNA patterns. So,
Interesting.
Yeah, I mean, understanding my own past lives, really, it didn't change my circumstances, but it made me understand. So almost every past life I had, I either lost children or I never had them. So either I died prematurely or they died prematurely. And I'm talking children, if I did have them, they were under 10. So, and I said, geez, okay, well, I can't change what already happened in this life. So how do I set myself up for the next life?
Yeah.
So I've been working on...
that is so important.
Yeah.
That is so important. A lot of people, a lot of families who basically run the world basically have it set up so that they have pacts before they even pass with family members. So when they come back, that's why it's mentioned as the DNA. 2 or 3 generations ago, in your family line, you may have been a child to somebody who now you are a parent to, but the thing is, it's still genetic. It's still the DNA line, and you keep coming back until you work this stuff out.
Yeah, I mean, and then we can go into the other layers, like I think the side of my genealogy that's really strong right now is my Russian Ukrainian side.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I've inherited a lot of the multi-generational healer and intuitiveness. But, you know, with the rumors in my family line is that we're also related to Rasputin. Mm-hmm. So
He's a powerful man.
Whether true or not, I don't know. But when you look at what has transpired, we've got doctors and nurses in that family line, so it's not unusual. But like, I watched my dad diagnose cancer in patients when all the tests were negative. I watched him diagnose appendicitis without any tests and arrange for surgery, you know. And, you know, my aunt, his sister read tea leaves and palms, and same with her mother.
I've run into people like that, and it's very interesting. It's just a tool for you to be able to express your insight into what they're dealing with.
Yeah, you know, and, you know, the part that I'm trying to crack into is my Celtic and Germanic side, which is my mother's side. And I'm finding I'm having to heal a lot of the generational trauma, and there's extreme trauma on that side. Just even with my grandmother lost her sister due to an illegal abortion. It says on the death certificate, illegal abortion in 1933 or something like that.
Wow.
And she lost her brother in World War II. Her father was extraordinarily abusive. He was an immigrant, but from what I understand is, so we're healing all those layers, right? And it's good, because I at one point thought my mother, for instance, was going to die a lonely old woman because she became very nasty and cold, and I was the one that ended up transitioning her. I was the one that did ceremony. I brought in, and I included the nurses. And we did 4 hours of ceremony and closing it out, and 6 months of, I think, the gift that, this is where sometimes illnesses can give you a gift. She was diagnosed with dementia, and dementia gave us the gift where she was able to have conversations and deal with things where prior she couldn't. She wasn't capable.
Right.
So this opened up the doorway to generational healing. In ways that was a huge gift, not just to me, but to her grandchildren and now her great-grandchildren. You know?
Yeah, very interesting. Yeah, it's how everything's just so connected.
It's so connected,
Yeah.
you know, and it's hard because, you know, it's like, how do you talk about these things? Because it's interlaced, you know, it's not just one or the other, right?
It's very woven, yeah.
It's very woven, you know, how we work with spirit, right? How we connect with the land, how we connect. I mean, even when I was writing this book, there's a concept that I was trying to find a way to talk to. It's a Japanese concept. How do I talk to American mindsets on? Which really has to do with, we kind of correlate to, like, you know, mantras or affirmations, or, you know, think positive and things will manifest, right? But the Japanese believe that when you speak, like, they didn't even have a written language until Buddhism was imported, because they believe so much that the medicine was in the words. And that, so much so that even when they die, they believe they leave an energetic imprint behind. So I started thinking about that with the energy that you speak. It's not just what you say, it's the energy behind the words, right? And it's like, even with the word anger, they have 2 words. And it's okuruna and akuruna. And it's because they have 2 different meanings, but yet we only have 1 word to express that. So when I was flying down to Colombia, peak pandemic, to have this book written, I got off the plane, I'm going, wow, the energy is extraordinarily light here. And I was not like in the ritziest area. There were 4-foot holes straight in the middle of the sidewalk. When the rain came, you saw the water right up to the door jambs, you know, but the energy was lighter. The people were lighter. It was hard to express. And then when I came back to Boston, it was heavy.
Yeah, well.
And we've got all these things in the soil, right?
Well, we also have we're basically built on rock. I mean, there's so much
Yeah.
granite, so much ledge that it's all, but that's one of the things I wanted to ask you about. You go to different places for your studies. You've met teachers around the world, and I was going to ask you, how does it feel, the energy of the area you go to when you go to learn something? How does that integrate into your receiving your teaching? And I think you just kind of touched on it.
Yeah, I mean, so like the Japanese, they don't necessarily always understand American culture. So I try to, there's like this, they have a way of being, right? And it's so integrated from the day they're born. And we are a very materialistic, patriarchal culture that also, hey, no pain, no gain, and just push right through it. Who cares if you break a leg? Keep doing it, and keep pushing it to the break of where you break. Mm-hmm. And with my teachers, at least, it is, if you've got an ache, your body's telling you something. Mm-hmm. Even if your shoulders are sore, mm-hmm. right? Are you listening? Are you listening to what your body's telling you?
Yeah. We're so competitive in this culture.
And it's me, and it's I, and it's me, mm-hmm. versus like even the foundations of Reiki, which is founded really on Shinto and Buddha, Japanese Shinto and Buddhist culture. It's like the word Rei, for instance, from literal translation versus how we interpret it in the West, is if you are like Miko's a female shaman, okay, mm-hmm. you will receive the blessings of the gods. That's just the word Rei, mm-hmm. right? So, and to be a female shaman, that's kind of like a female oracle or something like that. And usually back in the day, they would, if you had a very gifted child, they would take them and they would put them into studies and apprenticeship with a Shinto priest. Mm-hmm. Okay, but if you are talented, it's not about, hey, I want to make a name for myself. I'm going to be the next psychic next door on HBO. Tune in. Mm-hmm. It's about the gods are going to give you the homework, and you are to do what the gods ask you to do for the greater good of all life on earth. Mm-hmm. You are a steward. So it's like
you don't
huge,
choose the path chooses
right.
you.
And it's not like, hey, I got this gift. Like here we tend to be a lot more me and I centered, mm-hmm. versus at least what we're learning, and I'm still unpacking. It's an ever-going process, right, of unpacking a lot of these conditionings, right? Mm-hmm. So it's a lot more, how do I, like, for instance, the water, If you're taking a lot of medications, where does that go? Mm-hmm. Right? It goes into the toilet. Well, where does that water go? Mm-hmm. I don't care how good the system and treatments are, it still ends up back out into the ocean or streams or ponds. Mm-hmm. The fish then before we know it, we're ingesting those medications all over again. Mm-hmm. So it's how do we maintain a healthy temple to minimize the need. Like one of the mission statements of the Jikken and Reiki Institute in Kyoto is to minimize medical waste. Mm-hmm. So, and it was something that they did even with Japanese military. One of the reasons why the Japanese Navy was interested was because when you had battle wounds, it was to help mitigate and minimize the need for medical waste and help increase healing outcomes. Mm-hmm.
Well, that's actually one of the reasons why they developed a chemotherapy on the shiitake mushroom, was because when they started realizing how effective shiitake mushroom was for treating cancer issues, and it didn't matter what part of the body it was affecting, that they spent about 25, 30 years trying to isolate the active ingredient. That's the pharmaceutical industry trying to focus in on that so they could patent it and use it. And after about 30 years, they say, why are we doing this? So now they just extract the nutrient, the essence of the shiitake mushroom, and they actually use it as a drip right into your arm, and that's the chemotherapy.
Yeah, I mean, like Reiki, for instance, isn't about going into plants and doing things with plants, but yet, if you're following the traditions, it is also about how are you building relationship with the plants. Like, we have a lot of medicinal plants in our backyards that we spray Roundup on. And the most important one right now, this time of year, is dandelion. And everything with dandelion is edible, and it's probably one of the greatest medicines we have here that we can pick right out of our yards.
Right,
Yeah.
that's right,
There are places that have cultivated them so that they're bigger and better,
that's right.
but without, putting artificial.
Nutrient-dense soil, loose soil.
But dandelion likes crappy soil.
Well,
So it
yeah,
helps turn that soil over, right? So mugwort's another one. So these
Yeah.
are things like we can just have in our backyard. Like, let the dandelions grow, let the clovers grow, right?
That's great
I mean, all these things.
It's good for the bees.
It's
Good for the
it's
bees.
great
It's
for
good for your liver.
your breast tissues, all your
Right,
lymphatic
so
system.
we actually only have a few minutes left. If
Okay.
people have questions or want to
Right.
get hold of you,
Sure.
how can they, do you have a phone number, email?
Sure. So phone number is 857-880-0365. The website is www.larhealingwithspirit.com, and I'm on every platform, Healing with Spirit or Healing Trauma with Spirit, our Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter.
Okay, all right, just wanted to make sure we got that out there.
And
And
if they're
podcast-
interested in your books,
So you can go on or message me, and I can send them to you, send you the link, but it is on Amazon. Both books are available on Amazon.
Okay, what's the name of the second book? There's Feisty and then,
And Secrets to Healing.
Okay.
So it's an invitation to healing trauma and other root causes to chronic illness using Japanese Reiki Gokai.
do you have another book? Because I feel like there's a third book.
there's
Well,
one
there's
coming.
one
Yeah.
coming.
Okay.
Yeah.
I thought we
just
had
don't
mentioned that, I
know
wasn't sure.
when, yeah.
Okay, all right.
So is this
Working on it.
the Reiki that you learned when you were over in Japan? Is that like the Sui?
So I didn't go to Japan.
Oh, I thought you had mentioned that.
No, I was supposed to go to Japan in 2020.
Okay,
But no, my teacher, I have two teachers in that lineage. One lives in Greece, the other one lives in Japan. Tadao Yamaguchi actually lives in Kyoto. His mother studied with the founders of Reiki. So originally when they asked Chioko when they found out that Reiki had changed so long after practicing 65 years under Asui directly, she says, well, let's just call it Reiki. And they go, well, there's too many schools. How do you differentiate? She's like, well, it's Jikiden Reiki. And so Jikiden actually means direct teaching. So it follows along the line as it was taught during when Dr. Asui was still alive. So Dr. Asui, for those who may not know, was the primary student with Mikao Asui, the founder of Reiki.
Okay.
So, and he actually created the treatment options for folks with illness and disease. So that's what he developed Reiki for.
Yeah, in my classes though, he does get talked about.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, yeah, it definitely helped a lot with it though. Okay, so, I just wanted to get back into the book since we've got a little bit of course, but it's all very, really good topics though. So, lost my train of thought for just a moment there though. So these books, there was a lot of research behind it though, right, though, for what you wrote in these books?
So not with Feisty, because
Okay.
Feisty just talks about how I was incarcerated and how I overcame that
Okay.
as part of leaving domestic violence. Because one of the things that happens quite often is that a victim leaves, and there's a lot of pressure right now on states to address this in family courts, where abusers will use the system to continue patterns of abuse. So I was actually in court for 17 years, almost monthly, and I was only married to him 9. So go figure that one.
Yeah.
So I saw him more post-divorce than I think I did while I was married to him. But it wasn't about the children. It was about continuing patterns of abuse and to tank me. Versus the other one is more, does have research because it does have data and stats in there.
Okay. Yeah, so different aspects of the same subject though.
right, right.
Yeah.
Well, again,
And this one has 9 case studies too.
Okay, are
So
the
we
secrets
share.
to healing? Okay. Okay.
Which is very important, I think, to bring forth something like that. But one of the things that you mentioned